The first thought that came to my mind when I woke up was that my throat was a little sore. I tried to speak, but found that I couldn't. This was because I had something stuck in my throat, something hard. I looked around and realized I was in a hospital room with tubes and wires connected to various parts of my body. I also discovered that my left arm had been put in a cast, and I could feel the bandages on my face. What the hell is going on? I was perplexed. How long had I been here? What had happened to me? I tried to move, but found it difficult. The door to my room opened, and a nurse came in to check on me. She looked at my chart and checked my vital signs, then left the room. A few minutes later, she returned with a man who I assumed was a doctor. He also checked my vitals and shined a flashlight in my eyes. After he finished humming and grunting, he spoke to the nurse, and the two of them removed the tube that had been inserted into my throat. That explained why I couldn't speak earlier. "Welcome back to the world of the living, Mr. Neely," the doctor said as he stood up. "That was me, by the way. Jackson Neely, or Jack to my friends. I tried to speak, but my throat and lips were too dry. The nurse gave me a piece of ice, and I sucked on it until it melted. Then she gave me another. For how long?" I managed to wheeze. "You've been here 10 days, Mr. Neely," the doctor said. "You had a slight swelling of the brain, and we put you in a coma to let your head heal. You took a severe blow to the head. You also had a broken arm," he turned to the nurse. "Why don't you call Mrs. Neely and let her know that her husband is awake?" he said. I shook my head when he said that. "No," I told him. He looked at me worriedly. "Why not?" he asked. "She's the reason I'm here," I said, sucking on another piece of ice. "I see," the doctor said. "Then maybe we should go to the police." I nodded my head. "Yes," I said, "and to a divorce lawyer." The doctor laughed at that. "We'll call the police for you," he said. "In fact, one detective has already asked us about you. However, you will have to find your own divorce lawyer." I nodded my head. "Thanks anyway," I told him. He grinned, then ordered the nurse to take me to X-ray. As I was wheeled back to my room, a man in a trench coat walked in and introduced himself. "Detective Mel Green, Metro Police," he said, showing his badge. "Are you well enough to talk for a few minutes?" "Yes," I said, taking a sip of water. He sat down next to my bed and pulled out a notepad and a voice recorder. He placed the recorder on the tray in front of me and turned it on. "I hope you don't mind if I record this," he said. "No, not at all," I said. He said something into the recorder to note the date, time and location of the interview, then turned to me. "All right, Mr. Neely," he said. "Tell us what happened." "Well, I just got home after spending a couple days in Pittsburgh with a client," I told him. I had finished my visit a day early and wanted to get home to be with Julia, my wife. When I got home, I saw a strange car in the driveway. I thought she might have had company, one of the girls from her office. I parked in the driveway and walked into the house. Most of the house was plunged into darkness, but I could see light coming through from upstairs and heard moaning. I had a pretty good idea of what was going on, but I went upstairs anyway. That's when I saw them, Julie and some guy, having sex in my bed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Well, I walked into the room and screamed. They stopped and looked at me like I was an alien. The guy came out of my wife and I went at him. I was about to punch him in the teeth, but he beat me to it. Literally, he punched me right in the face. Once. It was the biggest fist I'd ever seen in my life. Next thing I know, I woke up here, I said. "Uh-huh," Detective Green said. "Did you recognize the man who was next to your wife?" "No, I'd never seen him before," I said. "Did you know your wife was having an affair on the side?" he asked. I suspected something was going on, but I wasn't sure, I said. "Wait a minute," I added. "I just remembered, there are CCTV cameras in the house. I hired a private investigator shortly before my last trip. I wanted to find out if my wife was cheating on me. He wired the house for audio and video just before I left. Everything was supposed to be saved on a cloud server. I never got a chance to check when I got home. They're probably still there." Detective Green opened his bag and pulled out a laptop. "Do you think you can access this from here?" he asked. "I think so," I said. I have the login and password written on the back of the card he gave me. It should still be in my wallet. The detective walked over to a small closet in the room and pulled my wallet out of the back pocket of my pants. I looked through it and found the card. Here it is, I said, pulling out the card. I handed the wallet back and he slipped it into my back pocket. Angus McGregor, Detective Green said, reading the name on the front of the card. Is this your private detective? Yes, he is, I said. He's the one who called 911, the detective said. From what I was told, he gave the police a statement, then followed the ambulance here and gave the hospital your insurance information. Have you talked to him yet? I asked. Yes, Green said. He told me he found you on the floor at the bottom of the stairs and then called 911. There was no one else in the house at the time he found you. Let's see what the video shows us, he added, turning on his laptop and connecting to the hospital's Wi-Fi. Once connected, he turned the laptop around so I could log in. I entered the information Julius had written on the card, and I was presented with a catalog with a list of videos. I selected a video that matched the time I was home and clicked play. The video began with Julie, my soon-to-be ex-wife, entering the living room through the front door, followed by a very large, muscular, bald man. Do you recognize this man? Mel asked. He's the one who hit me, I said, although I had never seen him before that day. We continued watching the video. After looking around the room, Julie turned to the man and gave him a scalding hot tongue kiss. Come on, she said to him. Let's go upstairs and finalize our deal. The big man grinned and slapped her ass. Let's do it, he said. They went up the stairs and soon the video ended. I remembered Julius telling me that cameras activate when you move, so I went back to the catalog and double-clicked the next one on the list. This video started with Julie and the bipedal mountain walking through the bedroom. Julie went to the dresser at her side, opened one of the drawers, and pulled out a thick envelope. She held it out to the man, who pulled out a huge wad of cash. He quickly counted them and put them back in the envelope. Half now. Half when the job is done, Julie said. Just like we agreed. Damn it, I thought to myself. Did she pay this guy to kill me? He grinned, looking her over from head to toe. So, sweet cheeks, what do you say we seal this little deal? He asked. Julia smiled, looking him over from head to toe. Then she began to undress. Soon she stood before him naked. The man undressed and they hugged once more before lying down on the bed. Which side does your husband sleep on? He asked. Why did you ask? She asked in response. That's the side I want to fuck you on, he told her. She giggled and pointed to the side closest to the door. He sleeps right there, she said. Good, he told her, pulling back the blanket. Come on, get over there. Let's leave a nice wet spot for him. You're so vicious, she said. That's when I walked in and caught them off guard. What the hell is going on here? I yelled at the video. The two traitors stopped having fun long enough to look at me. A smirk appeared on Julie's face as the big guy stepped out of her. I saw myself lunging at the much larger man as he stood, but he stepped back and hit me with his fist right in the middle of my face, causing me to fall instantly. Then he grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and hit me again, and again, and again. He punched me in the face several times, then dragged my collapsed body out of the room. Julia got out of bed and followed him, not bothering to cover herself. That was the end of the video. I went back to the catalog and selected the next video. This video showed 3 pairs of feet on the top landing of the stairs. Only one pair of feet, mine, had shoes on. The big man picked me up in his arms and literally threw me down the stairs. My body lay motionless at the bottom of the stairs. Is he dead? Julia asked. I don't know, the man replied. Do you want me to finish him off right now? Not in my house, she said. I don't want to clean up any more of his blood than necessary. Let him lie there. Maybe he'll do us both a favor and die. Maybe, the man said. Even if he doesn't, I can go back and finish the job. Let's get out of here. We can finish what we started in my hotel room. A couple minutes later, Julie and the man came down the stairs, got dressed, and walked out of the house, stepping over my body. Shortly after that, the video ended. Out of curiosity, I watched the next video and opened it. This video showed Angus entering the house. He checked on me, then pulled out his cell phone and called 911. He sat next to me until the paramedics and police arrived. I finished watching the video and checked the catalog. There was no more video after that. Whatever the cheaters had done, they had obviously decided to do it somewhere other than home. "What now?" I asked. "Well, we need to find your wife and her accomplice and arrest them," he said. "Are you sure you've never met this man before?" "No, never," I said. "You sound like you know who he is." "His real name is James Hammond," Detective Green said. "They call him Jimmy Ham. He's a hitman, wanted by the feds for a series of murders. He's well known for killing his victims with his bare hands after giving them horns. You're damn lucky to be alive. I just can't understand why your wife would want you dead. From what I know, you're basically a salesman." "A customer service rep," I said, correcting him. "I do a bit of traveling and sales, but a big part of my job is to keep customers happy by keeping them profitable." "Any problems in the marriage?" Green asked. "Not until recently, no," I answered him. "Are you one of those guys who has fun when you're out of town?" Mel asked. "You mean, do I cheat on my wife?" I asked. "Hell no. Do you think I'd cheat when there's one waiting for me at home? You've seen her. Would you chase women with a weapon like that at home?" "No, I can't say I would," Green said. "So revenge is ruled out as a motive. Tell me, do you have a life insurance policy?" "Yes," I said. "Through my work, I've earned $1 million policy. In the event of an accident, it pays out double." "And your wife is the beneficiary of that?" Green asked. "Yes," I said, "but that's not all." "What else?" he asked. "I won a lottery prize not too long ago," I said. $3 million after taxes. I was going to surprise Julie with a cruise for our anniversary." "Did she know about the money?" Green asked. "I told her I won, but I didn't tell her how much," I said. "I usually keep track of all our finances, so I didn't think she would know about it since she rarely looks at bank statements." "So, if something happened to you, she could potentially walk away with $5 million, right?" Green asked. "I suppose so," I said, after a little thought. "Do you think she'd really kill me over money?" "It's one of the oldest motivations known to man," Green said. "Shit, I said that. Why don't you log into your account and see how much you have left?" he suggested. I did so and found that Julie had withdrawn $5,000 each 3 times in the last 12 days. The rest was still in the account. "While you're here, why don't you go ahead and cancel any joint credit cards you may have? Once you're done, I'll call and temporarily block the account, just until we can take her into custody," he suggested. I took his advice and canceled our joint credit cards and reported her ATM card stolen. When I was done, he called to get an order to freeze Julie's account. "Any idea where your wife is now?" he asked when he was done. I shook my head. "I have no idea," I said. "Normally, I'd say she'd normally be at home at this time of day, but I really don't know. Angus might know." "Your private detective?" Mel asked. I nodded my head. "Yes," I said. "Call him," he said, holding out his cell phone to me. We'd been returning his calls for the last few days, so he'd be expecting my call anyway. I took the phone and dialed Angus's number. He answered after the second beep. "McGregor," he said when he answered. "Angus, it's Jack Neely," I said. "Jack, you're awake," Angus said. "Thank God, I was so worried, but that's not your phone." "No, Detective Green is at the hospital with me," I said. "Even better," he said. "I've been trying to contact him, but we keep missing each other." "Angus, do you know where Julie is?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Put the phone on speaker and I'll tell you both." I put the phone on speaker and placed it on the tray in front of me. "This is Detective Green," said the detective. "Can you hear me all right, Mr. McGregor?" "Of course," said Angus. "And call me Angus, please. Mr. McGregor was my father. We all laughed at that." "So where is Mrs. Neely now?" Mel asked. "She's at the international airport and has just bought a ticket to Chicago," said Angus. "However, the plane doesn't leave until 4 hours later, so you should have plenty of time to delay her." "And what about James Hammond?" Green asked. "Is he with her?" "Not at the moment," said Angus, "but from what I've learned, he's going to meet her there in the next couple of days." "Good," said Green. "Angus, keep an eye on her. I'll call and arrange for her to be detained. Will do, Angus said before ending the call. Detective Green called his partner and instructed him to get a warrant for Julie's arrest. He then made another call and sent an orientation, a bulletin for all counts, for Hammond. By the time he was done, the doctor had returned to the room. "How long is Mr. Neely going to be here?" Mel asked. "Probably a few more days," said the doctor. "He's making a fine recovery, but you know he's been beaten up pretty badly." "Yes, I can see that," said Mel. "I'm going to arrange for a couple of officers to guard him while he's here, if you don't mind." "That's fine with me, as long as they don't get in the way," said the doctor. "Good," Mel said in response. Before he could speak, he turned to me. "Take care of yourself, Jack. We'll be in touch. Call if you need anything." "Thanks, Detective," I said. After he left, I went to bed and tried to watch TV, but my thoughts kept coming back to my wife. Why would she do this to me? I asked myself. Wasn't I a good husband and provider? I thought back to our life together and wondered what happened to the sweet girl I met in college. After high school, I went straight to college. My father had worked in a factory his whole life and made sure I had enough money for college. So I went and got a degree in business. That's where I met Julia Hempstead. I was smitten from the moment we first met. We dated for a couple of years, fell in love with each other, and got married after graduation. I went to work for a financial services company that specialized in helping small to medium-sized businesses maximize profits. She took a job at a bank downtown. She started out as a teller, then moved into the mortgage lending department. We were both making good money and bought a house about a year after we got married. The first 4 years of our marriage were wonderful. We had sex almost every day of the week, twice on Saturdays and Sundays. I thought we were a happy couple living the dream. We even started talking about having kids. So why, after all this time, did she do it, I wondered? Was it just about the money? My thoughts were interrupted when I heard a knock on the door. I looked up and saw 2 policemen poking their heads into my room. "We'll be right outside the door to your room if you need anything," one of the officers said. I nodded my head. "Thank you, officers," I said. Soon after, another knock sounded and Angus stepped inside. He walked to the edge of the bed and looked me over from head to toe. "You look much better than when you were brought in," he said. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been run over by a truck," I said. "What's going on?" "Well, they arrested your wife at the airport," he said. "From what I understand, they're charging her with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder." "What about Hammond?" I asked. "They're still looking for him," Angus said. "They've also got police officers at your house, but so far there's no sign of him. By the way, I found your cell phone on the floor of your house. Couldn't find the charger, so I bought it for you. Let me just plug it in and charge it for you." "Thank you," I said as he plugged the phone in and placed it on the tray next to my bed. "I take it you haven't had a chance to talk to a divorce lawyer yet?" he said. "No, I just came out of my coma this morning," I said. He pulled a business card out of his pocket. "That's exactly what I thought," he said. "Call this lady as soon as you can. I do a lot of work for her, and I've already warned her that you'll call. She's very interested in your case, and by the way, absolutely hates traitors." "Thanks again," I said. "What happened after they ambushed me?" "Well, it looks like your wife had been planning this for some time," he said. "She took a vacation shortly after you left for Pittsburgh. I don't think she was planning on ever coming back. After your attack, she'd been in hiding with Hammond and her boyfriend, moving from motel to motel, never returning to your house. I tried several times to contact Detective Green to let him know where they were, but we kept missing each other." "Yeah, he told me you two had returned calls," I said. "So, any idea where Hammond is now?" "No," Angus said. "I've been doing some digging, and if I hear anything, I'll pass it on to Green." "Sounds like fun," I said. "What now?" "Well, there's not much left to do except catch Hammond," Angus said. "And you need to rest and recuperate. I'll come by and check on you from time to time." "I appreciate that," I told him. He shook my hand and left me alone with my thoughts. When I had enough charge on my phone, I called the lawyer he recommended. "Alicia Hawkins' law office," the receptionist said when she answered. I'd like to speak to Miss Hawkins, please, I told her. This is Jack Neely. She was recommended to me by Angus McGregor. Just a moment, please, said the secretary in her cheerful voice. A few moments later, I heard another woman's voice on the phone. Alicia Hawkins, she introduced herself. Is this Mr. Neely? Yes, I said. I got your name and phone number from Angus McGregor. He advised me to call you. Yes, Mr. McGregor told me about your situation, she said. I've been waiting for your call. I understand you're in the hospital now? Yes, I am, so it's a bit difficult to move around at the moment, and I'm also being hunted by an assassin, I said. That's what I heard, she said. I'll tell you what, Mr. Neely. I'm just about ready to get this case over with here at the office. Why don't I visit you there? Would that be all right? Wow, I thought. A lawyer who makes house calls. That would be awesome, I said. Excellent, she said. I'll be at your place shortly. Alicia showed up with her briefcase about an hour later, and we spent the next hour discussing the details of my divorce. Although the state we lived in was a no-fault state, divorces could be allowed on grounds such as betrayal or cruelty. Alicia said she would draw up the papers citing betrayal and extreme cruelty, especially since Julie hired a hitman to kill me, cheated on me with him, and then left me for dead on the floor of my house. Having her in jail would go a long way toward helping me get what I wanted in the divorce, which was pretty much everything. She was packing her things back into her briefcase when Mel knocked on the door and poked his head inside. He smiled and entered the room after I waved him in. Good afternoon, Detective Green, Alicia said with a smile. Miss Hawkins, he said. I'm not interrupting anything, am I? Not at all, she said. We were just finishing up. Do you have news for us? In fact, that's why I came, he said, sitting down. Well, I asked. Your wife confessed everything, he said. Said she hired Hammond to kill you and made it look like an accident. Why? I asked. Money, he said. And lust. She said she'd started having an affair with a coworker, a guy named Sylvester Johnson. Do you know him? No, I don't, I said. Turns out Johnson is Hammond's nephew, he said. Your wife and Johnson wanted to elope and go to Hawaii but couldn't afford it. She looked at your account, saw your lottery winnings, and thought it would be her ticket to paradise. Figured with that amount and your insurance payout, she'd walk away with $4 or $5 million. It's not the first time I've seen this happen. It probably won't be the last. The district attorney is asking for the maximum penalty of life in prison without parole. He's also going to recommend that she be held without bail. Says because she was caught trying to flee the city, she could be considered a flight risk. So Johnson is the one who set her up with Hammond? I asked. That's what she says, Mel told me. We've got Johnson in custody, and I'll talk to him later. If what she says checks out, we'll charge him too. What about Hammond? I asked. We're still looking for him, he said. Right now, almost every officer in the county is after him. Until we get him behind bars, we'll keep a guard at your door, and there will be patrols outside your house. I shook my head incredulously. I just don't understand it, I said. She'd never even hinted that she was unhappy. Why now? Who knows, Mel said. People sometimes do crazy things when money is involved. How long are you going to be here? Doc says a few more days, I said. He wants to make sure it's healing well. Sounds reasonable, Mel said. Well, I'll stay out of your way for now. If anything happens, I'll keep you posted. Thank you, Detective, I said. My pleasure, he said, standing up. Miss Hawkins, good to see you again. It's good to see you too, Date. Green, she said with a smile. After he left the room, I looked at Alicia. I take it you know him? I asked. Yes, I represented him in the divorce, she said. So I'm going to take care of this case and send your wife to jail. Let me write you a check for your retainer, I said. Could you get my wallet out of my pants pocket, please? Sure, she said, taking my wallet. I have a habit of keeping a blank check in my wallet just in case, so I pulled it out and wrote it for the amount she requested. She smiled as she accepted the check, then put it in her briefcase. We'll be in touch, Jack, she said as she stood up. Good luck to you, Thank you for your help, I said. I watched her walk out the door, then turned my attention back to the TV. As they say, all good things come to an end sometime. After a couple weeks, the doctor said I had recovered enough to go home. During this time, I had several visitors, friends and work colleagues, Angus and Detective Green, who kept me informed about the case against Julie and the ongoing hunt for Hammond. Mel told me that Sylvester had been charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Julie had gotten the divorce papers while in jail and had decided to accept the dissolution of our marriage without a fight. Alicia told me she signed the papers without any objection, which surprised me. "In 60 days, you will be a free man," she said. "I got the house and all our possessions. Julia would be allowed to keep her car, clothes, and personal belongings. I called her parents, and they agreed they would take everything. What they did with it afterwards was their business." Angus picked me up from the hospital and drove me home. "Just curious," he said. "Do you have a gun?" "Just an old shotgun my dad gave me when I was 17, I said. "It was my birthday present, and my dad used to take me trap and skeet shooting. Those were some of my happiest memories. I still had my shotgun, but I hadn't fired it in a long time. It lay, oiled, in my locked gun case. I also had a box of shells for the thing." "Why did you ask?" I asked. "Hammond's still walking around somewhere," he said. "You might want to keep it handy." Shit, I thought. That night I pulled out the old shotgun and examined it again. It was in good condition, even though I hadn't used it in a while. I pulled out the box of ammo and loaded it. I thought about sleeping in the master bedroom, but I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen there before. So I slept in my deep chair in the living room, keeping the loaded shotgun within reach. It turned out to be a wise move. That night, I woke up late after I thought I heard some scratching from outside the house. I grabbed my shotgun and looked around from where I was sitting. I only had one healthy arm, so I decided to use my left arm, which was still in a cast, as a support for the shotgun. I looked, and I thought I saw the silhouette of a large man just outside the sliding glass door leading to the backyard. As I looked, the silhouette moved and I saw a large pistol in one of his hands. Obviously, he hadn't seen me yet, or I'd probably be dead. I thought I could pounce on him, so I reached out and flicked the switch on my lamp. When I did, I saw him James Hammond, and he was armed. He looked at me in surprise. I saw him start to raise his gun, so I raised my shotgun and fired. He put his back against the mesh door, nearly knocking it off its rails. As he did so, he fired his pistol, but his bullet hit the ceiling. I stood up, chambered another round, and fired again. This bullet hit him squarely in the chest and pierced his body through the mesh door. I saw him lying on my veranda with blood pouring from his body. I picked up the phone and called 911. I chambered another round and slowly made my way to the door. I stood over his body and was about to put a third bullet in him when I saw flashing lights. Soon the room was filled with officers with their guns drawn. I lowered my shotgun and raised my hands so they could see I was unarmed. One of the officers felt Hammond's pulse and shook his head. Another officer called for an ambulance. I spent the next hour or so giving statements to the police officers. Just when I thought it was over, the ambulance arrived. Detective Green drove in, followed by the paramedics. The paramedics examined Hammond and placed his lifeless body in a bag. After zipping him up, they placed him on a gurney and wheeled him away, stopping only to let Mel look at Hammond's face. "Are you okay?" he asked me. I nodded my head. I was still a little shaken by the whole experience. I'd never shot a man before, and I'd certainly never killed anyone. Until that night, the only thing I had ever killed was a clay pigeon. "Yeah," I said. "I'll be all right." Before he could speak, Mel turned to the other officers. "Are you guys done here?" he asked. "We're finishing up now, Detective," the sergeant said to Mel. "Good," Mel said. "Make sure I get a report on this as soon as possible." "Will do," said the sergeant. Mel turned to me again. "How about I buy you a cup of coffee after they're done?" he asked. "Yeah, that sounds good," I said. "Let me go and throw something on. I don't think they'll like it if I come in my pajamas." "Probably not," Mel said. I left the living room and headed upstairs. After changing into jeans and a t-shirt, I went back downstairs. The other officers had just left and Mel was waiting for me. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm ready," I said. We walked out of the house and got into his car. He drove us to a 24-hour coffee shop not far from the house. We went inside and ordered our coffee. It had been a while since I'd had a mocha with caramel, so I ordered one. A large one. Mel grinned as he paid the bill. "I thought you said you wanted coffee," he joked. "Not the liquid candy." "I haven't had anything like this in a while, so I thought I'd treat myself," I told him. We sat down and sipped from our drinks. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I'm okay, I guess," I said. "I've never shot anyone before." "I know how you feel, Jack," he said. "Have you ever killed anyone before?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "The first time it happened, I almost threw up. I was just a rookie cop, fresh out of the academy. I hadn't been on duty for a month. Like you, I knew it was either him or me, and I was determined that I wasn't the one who was going to be put in a body bag." "And you had a chance to practice," I said. "Yeah, well, I don't think you could ever really train anyone to handle something like that," he said. "You've been lucky. You know that, don't you? Hammond was a trained killer." "Yes," I said quietly. "I know." "Well, the important thing is that you're alive and he's not," Mel said. "Lucky for you, this state has lock laws, so you won't be prosecuted." "Thank goodness for that," I said. Mel smiled as I chuckled. He pulled a business card out of his pocket and held it out to me. I read the name on the card. Dr. Rose Carlson. "I think you should call her," Mel said. "She's the best consultant in the business. If anyone can help you through this, it's her." "Thanks, I will," I told him, tucking the card into my shirt pocket. We sat for a while, drinking coffee and talking about all sorts of things, fishing, soccer, general man stuff. After we finished our drinks, Mel looked at his watch. "I have to get back to work," he said. "Are you ready to hit the road?" "I'm ready," I told him. We threw our empty cups in the trash and walked out of the coffee shop. He dropped me off at my house and wished me all the best. "Don't forget to call Dr. Carlson," he said. "I'll be in touch." "Thanks again, Detective Green," I told him. I gave him a look, then went back to my house. I tried to get some sleep, but I couldn't. Finally, around 7:30 a.m., I got up, showered, and had some breakfast. I decided there was only one thing left for me to do. After making a phone call, I went to the county jail where Julie was being held. I sat in the visiting area and watched as Julie was led out. She looked tired, and the orange jumpsuit she was wearing didn't suit her at all. She sat down in the chair across from me and picked up the phone from her side of the plexiglass partition that separated us. I picked up the phone on my side. "Hi, Julie," I said. "Hi, Jack," she answered. "What do you want?" I signed the papers. "You have everything now." "I want some answers," I told her. "How long has this been going on with Sylvester?" "I think you have a right to know," she said. "Not very long, maybe 2 or 3 months." "Why?" I asked. Was I not a good enough husband or lover? Was it something I did or said? Why would you rip my heart out like that? "I don't know," she said. "I guess I was enchanted by his charm. I know we talked about having kids, and I was scared. I was afraid I'd get fat and ugly and you wouldn't find me attractive anymore." "That's bullshit, Julie, and you know it," I said. "It doesn't justify what you did. There's got to be something else. What is it? Is it the money?" Julie lowered her eyes in embarrassment before answering. "Well, I think so," she said. "Sylvester told me that we could use it to escape and start over. Maybe take a trip around the world." "Is that why you decided to kill me, Julie?" I asked. "Sylvester said he could arrange for me to get all the money plus your insurance," she said, "without having to pay a lot of money for the divorce." "And he introduced you to Hammond?" I asked. She nodded her head. "Did you know Hammond was Sylvester's uncle?" I asked. Julia nodded her head again. "Yes," she said. "Then why sleep with Hammond and in our bed?" I asked. "He said he'd give me a discount if I fucked him in our bed," she said. "That's when you walked in and caught us. And you just left me for dead," I said. Tears ran down Julia's cheeks as she nodded her head. "Yeah," she mumbled, stammering. "I'm sorry." "Hammond is dead," I told her after an awkward silence. She looked at me shocked. "What do you mean, dead?" she asked. "He came to finish the job you paid him to do," I said. "I killed him when he broke into the house." "How?" she asked. "The shotgun my dad gave me when I was a kid," I said. "Threw his ass back out the door." "I totally forgot about that shotgun," she said. She looked at me with sad eyes. "I'm so sorry about everything. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I laughed loudly, loud enough to get the guard's attention for a moment. "You've got to be kidding me, Julie," I said. "No, I will never forgive you for what you did. And as far as I'm concerned, you'll have the rest of your life to think about it. I hope it was worth it for you. Goodbye, Julie." I hung up the phone, not wanting to hear anything more from her. She hung up slowly and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I stood up, turned around, and walked away. The next 2 months flew by. It took a while, but eventually I got everything I wanted packed up and out of the house. After doing some renovations to the house, I put it on the market and bought a nice apartment near my office. I was called to testify at Julia's trial as well as Sylvester's. It didn't take long for the jury to find them both guilty on all charges. A week later, I was asked to appear in court for Julia's sentencing. The judge thanked me for my time and sentenced Julie to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sylvester also received a life sentence. Turns out I had a life sentence as well, but mine was not served in prison. Julie's betrayal and attempted murder of me had affected me more than I thought. My body healed, but emotionally I was shattered. I spent the next 2 years in counseling with Dr. Carlson, who said I was suffering from a form of PTSD. I worked, came home, ate, watched TV, and went to bed. I went to the gym 3 times a week and went to counseling once a week. That was my life. I couldn't even bring myself to go out or ask a woman out. I just didn't trust anyone. As for sex, well, let's just say I watched movies from time to time and got to know my right hand very well. Finally, Rose suggested that I put my fears aside and ask someone out. I mulled it over for a while before I finally mustered up enough courage to take the next step. But I wondered, who should I ask out? There were quite a few women in my office who showed interest in me, but I was concerned about dating coworkers. Finally, one day I decided to hell with it and asked Rhonda, a coworker who worked in another division of the company, out to dinner. To my amazement, she accepted. We had a great time, and I felt more relaxed with her than I had originally realized. We didn't have sex on that first date. It happened after the 3rd date, and she turned my world upside down. We've been dating for about 6 months now, and things have been going pretty well. She even introduced me to her parents, and we seem to get along great. Will I ever get married again? I don't know. Maybe someday. Right now, however, I'm just taking things one day at a time. Who knows what the future will bring?